In today's episode of AI for the Rest of Us, Sylvan and I got to speak to Jamie Dobson, who's a co founder of Container Solutions, longtime builder of software teams, and now author of Visionaries, Rebels, and Machines. In our conversation, Jamie shares how the chaos of COVID and running a company led him to write a book that explains cloud computing and AI for non technical readers. We'll dig into why AI is the cherry on top of decades of computing history and what leaders can do today to create safer, more innovative teams. AI for the Rest of Us is a thriving community of over 1,000 AI explorers. Join us for our 2-day event on October 15th and 16th in London. We promise inspiring and practical talks without all the jargon. For our listeners, you can use the code LIVE25 for 25% off the ticket price. Now, let's get into our conversation with Jamie. Jamie, welcome to the AI for the Rest of Us podcast. For folks meeting you for the first time, I don't know how many of them will be out there since you are very prevalent. You're very active in the ecosystem. But what's your path from building software teams to writing a book aimed at non-technical readers about tech history and AI?
Well, I think the path is at least partially to do with COVID. I was the co-founder of Container Solutions, the first chief executive, and then I kind of swapped seats about a year ago. And what happens is as you start to succeed as a manager and a leader, all of the space for creativity starts to vanish because you've got upset customers, upset staff. And in the depths of COVID, in the worst moment, in our history, I'd just had baby twins, had just been born. So everything was going mad. And my whole Monday to Friday was just filled with crisis management, running the business, looking after my family. And I started pecking away on Saturday mornings before everybody woke up at some creative writing just to get some creative kicks. And after a couple of weeks, I thought I had a few paragraphs on Edison. A couple of weeks after that, I was on the way to talking about the birth of the computer. And I thought, I'll just see where this takes me. And that is the honest story. And then after 5 years of pecking away, I thought, I wonder if I should try to bring this project to a conclusion, which is what I did last year.
Very good. So if you could describe your book in one sentence, and maybe the question is like, what does the book solve and who is it for?
I wish I could answer in one question. Originally, once upon a time, there was a gentleman called Sam. I'm in the Container Solutions office right now in Farringdon, and he was new. He's from the sales team, so he knew about sales and business development. But he asked the question, "What is the cloud?" Now, of course, I know how to answer that question, but not quickly. And so to understand really what the cloud is, you need to understand what the computer is. So in a way, Sam was that target reader, if you've really got no understanding of what the cloud is. And I think nowadays, if you're a parent, a teacher, a business person, the tentacles of cloud computing and artificial intelligence are holding our societies fast and deeply. We need to understand what these technologies are. So once upon a time, you could say, "Oh, I don't know what a computer is. I'm not technical." I don't think any of us can say that anymore and expect to survive in the society that's emerging around us. So that was the original reader, and then by a wonderful stroke of good fortune, the team at the DevOps London meetup had said to me, it was about a year ago, I think it might have been 2 years ago, "Can I come and give a talk?" Well, I was right in the middle of chapter 10 at the point of the book, which is about Amazon. So I came and I gave a talk about that. And then there was a gaggle of people in a queue waiting to speak to me. And they said, "Can you tell us more about the olden days in computing?" I said, "No problem." So I thought they wanted to know about time sharing and the birth of Apple. And they were like, "Oh no, we're talking about when AWS started." And so what I realized is there was a lot of young people who really don't understand the history of not only computing, but of cloud computing, people in their 20s who've just recently graduated, for example. And so those were the other readers. So this is a very long sentence. I'm very, very sorry. I couldn't do it in one sentence. But the book is for the curious reader who wants to understand leadership and how it leads to building technology, or the curious citizen who wants to understand cloud computing better. And I must tell you, gentlemen, a number of my techie friends, very, very deep technical friends, text me to say, "Okay, I learned something there." So maybe for all the old techies listening, there might be something for them as well.
Now, you've said that AI is the cherry on top of the cloud computing cake. In plain English, what does that mean exactly?
So this is a great question. One of the sort of readers, the intelligent and curious readers, for the book might be somebody who works in artificial intelligence or wealth management. And I'm saying this, I got a real life example. A friend of mine who will remain nameless had said to me while I was in the middle of writing the book, that she was in charge now of the part of her wealth fund for investing in AI companies. I was like, great, congratulations. She said, none of us know what we're doing. Now, I'd seen this before. I'd seen this before with the arrival of the web and web scale applications and then so-called web companies, pets.com and things like this. So I'd said to her as we were chatting, it's really hard for you to understand AI if you don't understand where it's coming from. So it's the cherry on the top of a lot of cake. The next layer of the cake would be, in my opinion, cloud computing. You need lots of raw CPU to train models. You also need data. You also needed this theoretical breakthrough in the 1980s from Jeff Hinton with the backpropagation of errors. So really, I tried to explain to her that if you really want to understand AI, which is the pinnacle of what we're doing, it really does benefit you to go through the layers. And then once you start there, well, what's a computer? What's a bunch of computers? What's the cloud? Then all of a sudden, when you eat that cherry, it'll taste so much better because you've understood, what's gone into the rest of the cake. Nobody just wants the cherry, right? Everybody wants the cake and the cherry and a nice cup of coffee.
Yeah, it's been around for a while, but in the last few years, you've had like a very big progression of the industry. And probably as you were writing this book, is there anything specific that you learned in the process of writing this book?
Oh, I learned a lot of things in the process of writing the book. One of my biggest fears was as a computer programmer. Computer programmers think they're clever, but we're not that clever. The hierarchy of smartness in tech is we're in the middle, computer programmers in the middle. Above us are the electronic engineers, they're really clever, and above them are the theoretical physicists. They're the brain boxes, and below us right, and below us on the hierarchy, people who went to management school. So that's what I think. So I was afraid of the transistor, and I was like, for 30 years I've been avoiding this. So I thought I can, with a straight face, try to explain the history of computing if I don't start to understand what the transistor is. So I learned a bunch of stuff around the transistor, where it came from, the very, very close relationship between the Department of Defense of the United States and the sort of seeding of what would become the technology industry or the computer industry. So I learned a bunch of stuff then. I think what I also learned, which might seem paradoxical, is that AI as we know it has actually been around for quite a long time. And my keynote at the conference will be about the so-called perceptron. It's a neural network, essentially, the first one. And what changed was not necessarily the technologies, but the power of the technologies. These things don't work without CPU and data. So it's almost as if the idea of the perceptron was waiting for the rest of computing to catch it up. This was quite eye-opening for me.
Now, that sounds like something that might be reserved for the upper echelon, as you said, the physicists and the people that really have a lot of knowledge. And you mentioned that hierarchy, people that are in management might fall into a different category. But you link breakthrough tech to human-centric management. What's one habit that a manager out there can start this week to make teams safer to AI? What makes safer to AI when it comes to learning it, and also to fail small and not be afraid of making huge mistakes that could be very disruptive and damaging to their organizations.
Creating a psychologically safe environment is extremely challenging. And it's also quite strange. But once I explain it, I'm hoping that your listeners will understand. It's both an end goal and an instrumental value. So you become psychologically safe by practicing psychological safety. Now, without being disrespectful, the most important thing most managers can do is just chill. Just chill for a second, take a breath. Your body language, your tone of voice, your facial expressions, how you act in a room, especially if you've got authority, will spread. And if anything, if we need anything to sort of have breakthrough ideas, whether that's just a small piece of code or fixing a bug that's been driving you crazy for the last few days, when people start to relax, people start to take risks. Now, when you start to take risks, when you start to stretch yourself, sometimes you'll succeed and sometimes you'll fail. Well, there's another way of saying that. Sometimes you'll succeed, sometimes you'll learn. And so the next moment for a manager who's getting used to psychological safety and creating it in their work environment is holding their nerve when the first failure comes. Taking a breath and trying to understand, okay, was this a fault? Was this just an act of stupidity? In which case a conversation might need to happen. Or Was this on the other end of the spectrum and somebody's really tried something and it was in a new area? So actually there was a chance of failure. What have we learned by that? So I think the shortest answer to that question is just relax. And then after that, we can start to look at the technical practices of design, of experimentation, how to analyze results, failure analysis. But all of that stuff is quite, advanced. You need to start by chilling out.
Okay, so once you've reached this Zen zone, is there like a specific type of project that a small team could tackle? And on the other side of the spectrum, are there tasks or things that you recommend teams not to attempt yet?
I think this is a great question. So one of the things that I've been teaching for quite some time is about how do you fail smartly. So doing random things, of course, that might lead to failure. If you're just doing strange things that are out of the ordinary, if, for example, you decide to use an artificial intelligence system to do your accounts, even though your accounting team has been doing, fantastic job for the last 10 years, I would say this is unnecessarily risky. So there are four things people need to remember. If you fail in a new area, this is a good thing. So try to apply your experiments into something new. Try to move towards a new goal and try to fail where possible with new knowledge. So if you are testing a tool that hasn't been tested before, these three things are the most important. And then on top of that, make the failure small. Now, when it comes to artificial intelligence, this can get a bit tricky. Obviously, the first places people experiment are around things like code generation. So large language models. I know the team at Container Solutions and the teams at my customers have been using Claude or ChatGPT, and they've been using it to summarize information. This is a reasonably low cost experiment. The problem is, what does a medium cost experiment look like? And the answer to that question is we don't know. Now, one sensible experiment for a team that's infrastructure is really slick would be to start training their own models. So, for example, you might have a bunch of HR documents and you might want to train a model so that people can ask a question: how many holidays have I got left? Is Monday a bank holiday in the United Kingdom? Is it the same in the United States? However, in order to get to that level, you need to have really good infrastructure, continuous delivery. You have to have some machine learning capabilities. So for some teams, that will be a simple next step, a simple experiment. For other teams, that will be absolutely gigantic. So I know it's not a great answer. I don't really know. I think it depends on the context.
And speaking of the context, you mentioned the historical elements that have gone into to where we're at today. And for a lot of folks out there too, in the conversations that we've been having, there's not just one stance on AI. It really is, sort of in the eye of the beholder. Is it for good? Is it for bad? And the debates that are surrounding it. Your day one keynote touches on Marvin Minsky and early AI debates. What's the layperson takeaway on this, and why does it still matter?
This is a funny one. As soon as a technology becomes established, we stop calling it artificial intelligence. So we used to call recommendation engines AI. We don't call them that anymore. We just call them recommendation engines. I think the layperson's answer to this question is dead simple. There is no such thing as artificial intelligence. You've got salespeople who would like you to believe that these systems exist, that one day they might be sentient or be feeling. My position is that they do not exist. And right now, with the current technologies, they never will exist. So you basically have got two types of AI. You've got forecasting systems, and those are the ones that try to predict the future based on behavior. That is your Netflix recommendation algorithm. Um, then you've got systems that try to extrapolate rules from existing data sets. If that's for a recommendation system, that's fine. But what happens if that's about insurances or where to deploy the police force? Because if traditionally one street was highly criminal but has cleaned itself up, are they going to get more police on their street because the algorithm has said that they deserve that? So as soon as you start using historical data to predict the future, you start to also cement injustices there. So I think we need to remember primarily these machines, well, they're not really machines like robots, they're computer programs. They're computer programs. And you mentioned uh, Rosenblatt and people like that from the Perceptron and Minsky and Papert. One of the creators of the tool ELIZA. So I don't know if you know about ELIZA, Bab. Did that ever cross your path? So ELIZA was a computer program developed by, it's because you're too young, Bart, you see, that's what's gone wrong there. You're too young to remember this stuff.
I'm turning 40 in a couple weeks. Don't worry.
So okay, well, my next birthday is 50, but anyway, keep that quiet. Right. So Eliza was a great computer program developed by a man called Joseph Weizenbaum. This was going all the way back to the mid 1960s. And Eliza simply answered questions, and she had a few modes. One of them was therapist mode. So if Eliza said to you, "Oh, how are you feeling today, Bart?" and you'd say, "Oh yeah, well, I'm a bit sad," and then Eliza would say, "Tell me more about that." Now, this was the crudest sort of if-else logic you could possibly imagine. And yet, people stepped away from that computer program, a terminal program at the command line. There's no graphical user interfaces. There was no avatars, none of that stuff. And they said, it's alive. We think Eliza. And 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 um and Weizenbaum was absolutely flabbergasted because he created it. And it's like, how stupid must you be to sort of project a mind into this device and to think that this thing could be alive? But humans, whenever they hear words or see words, they assume there's a mind behind them. So if people, it's called the Eliza effect, by the way, when you think that a machine or a computer program is sentient, the Eliza effect is still in play today. But if people fell for it back then hard, what on earth are they going to do when this? Well, we know what happens. What on earth happens when 50 years of progress meet, you know, humanity that has not evolved in 50 years? And that's one of the things we talk about in the book. Technologies evolve rapidly. Human nature, well, doesn't evolve at all. That's it. We're not in the space of 200 years. So this is a real issue. So I think for the layperson, they need to remember that these are just computer programs. There are a lot of salespeople out there who desperately targeted institutions who don't need these systems, but are desperate because they're underfunded, because they're up against deadlines. The public sector is ripe with snake oil salespeople saying that AI will solve all their problems when they will not. So I would say let's not be daft. From the very beginning, when the spinning jenny came out, all the way through robotization of the last century and cloud computing of this century, salespeople have preyed on the fear of their customers in order to get those deals over the line. So let's remember these are just computer programs. They either do forecasting or they extrapolate patterns from the past, and they may or may not be useful in your business. Most likely they won't be useful because we're still developing the use cases. So just chill. That's the answer to my other question. Everybody just take a breath.
Managers and non-managers alike, take a breath and just chill. That's good.
I think that might be like a big part of your book. It's about all the meditation and yoga and breathing exercises and how to become a Zen person in the workplace.
I think maybe that will be my next book, The Mindful
Right?
Manager. Maybe I should do that.
Love it. Jamie, we just discussed about what AI is not. I'd like to jump on what it could actually do. I mean, obviously, these computer program, as you name them, are extremely powerful, and we are just scratching what we can do with them. What do you think are new groundbreaking things that people might be able to do in the near future using these tools?
So one of the things I learned from writing Visionaries, Rebels and Machines was that predicting the future is a fool's errand. So I'm going to avoid predictions for a moment. I will indulge your question, I promise. But what I really learned was the following. Who actually invents a thing, right? And you can look at Jeff Bezos and the team at Amazon, or you can look at Thomas Edison and his team at Menlo Park. You could remove all the names and the names of the technologies, and the story is almost identical. Is it the person who invents the components? Sometimes Thomas Edison invented components, sometimes Amazon did. Often they borrowed components that existed already and they made them better. Thomas Edison took the idea of an incandescent light bulb, and of course, Bezos and the team at AWS were building on top of the web frameworks of the day. So, is that the person who invents the system? Or is it the person who brings those components together into a holistic system? I think 2 years ago, I'd have said, yes, actually, that person's the inventor. But then I learned a universal truth that actually, until a system is in the hands of a user, We don't exactly know what's going to happen to it. So Edison had no idea that people would plug in all manner of devices, toasters, later radios, televisions, and he had no idea that, electricity would power pacemakers inside human beings. I think the same can be said of Amazon. They really didn't know what was going to happen with the cloud. Developers had sort of really had ran to it. You could program it through APIs. You could control it and configure it programmatically. So the real inventor is often the user or the savvy business person who matches a market need on the one hand with a technology on the other. That is a remarkable feat of creativity. So what my prediction is, and I'm telling you now, this will become 100% true, is that savvy people out there will connect use cases to the technology. Boom, that's my statement. However, if I was correct, then surely we would see we would see some of this stuff happening already. And of course, I'm very happy to report that that is true. Now, forget about all these madmen in Silicon Valley, and they're always men, by the way, I'm afraid. Um, and now let's consider what's just happened in Madrid. It ended about 2 weeks ago, and it was the European this is quite a mouthful, this. The European Society of Cardiology, they had their annual conference. And in that conference, they spoke about three separate uses of artificial intelligence. Now, the first one I absolutely love. It is an AI powered stethoscope. Now, the stethoscope itself is a brilliant piece of kit. And when it came out, all the doctors rejected it. They said, we don't need stethoscopes. If you can't listen to your patient's chest with your ears, then you're not a real doctor. So for most of the first years of the stethoscope being a thing, it was rejected. Well, anyway, there is now an AI-powered stethoscope. You pop it onto the chest of the patient, and it listens, of course, but the data gets sent to a place in the cloud where, based on a model that's already trained, it can spot patterns which will report abnormal rhythms, problems with valves, and all of the things that a natural human doctor could never predict. So while we've all been arguing on LinkedIn and Twitter for the last years, AI is going to take our jobs, AI is not going to take our jobs, AI is going to become killer robots, AI is not going to become killer robots. While we've all been arguing, real life doctors and practitioners have just ignored us all and they've got busy finding a real use case. Now, that's only one. Now, number two, at the same conference, there's a stroke scanning system that helps people who've been disabled. So, for example, it helps with recovery rate. So if you can spot the stroke early and get the treatment in early, then the recovery is much quicker. And then referring back to an earlier part of our discussion, somebody has created a generative AI chatbot, but they've used good data, sensible data that are based on diagnostic criteria, research papers, and lots of guides and rules from existing hospitals and existing clinical practices. And the reason I say they've used good data is they haven't scraped Wikipedia. So now you've got a large language model that can answer sensible questions. So those are just three use cases. Now, the question is, what the hell comes next? Well, it's hard to imagine, isn't it? I think your guess would be as good as mine. You have to imagine that healthcare is going to change dramatically. You really do. When Thomas Edison was busy in Menlo Park, 1 in 5 children never made it to their first birthday. And the key change was the Food and Drug Administration agency in America that basically prioritized public health over private profiteering. What on earth is going to come next for us? So it is possible that we will see a total shift in public health. Already, the arrival of these miracle weight loss drugs are having a huge effect on obesity, which is a problem that we've not really been able to solve for the last 25 years. So when regulations meet better medicines, meet artificial intelligence systems, I must say for somebody as old as me, even I get excited by what lays ahead in healthcare.
And speaking of which, what is next for you, Jamie? You've written this book. What are the next projects you're going to be working on? What are you excited about for the upcoming months?
There's two things. There's the work I'm doing with my customer. Well, actually, all my work is related. You asked me earlier about the book. A lot of the leaders I deal with have read the book and called me back and said, "Now I know what you were trying to tell me at the last Christmas party." So we are now running Visionaries, Rebels, and Machines workshops. So what does a leader at the top need to do? How can they organize their work? What lessons can they take from Xerox Park and Amazon? And what do their middle managers have to do to create psychological safety? This is now all consuming for me. How do I change these brilliant stories into frameworks, and simple workshops and coaching sessions that my customers can use. So that's dead exciting. Back on the technology side, because I still like my technology, Container Solutions are developing this thing called the Continuous Compliance Framework. This is what we're calling the final frontier of shifting left. We've shift left on container scanning, we've shifted left on testing, and now we are trying to create this tool. In fact, we have created it. We're trying to find use cases for it that continually checks the compliance, not just of software systems, but all of the teams that are using them. So that is really exciting for us. I can imagine that will take me at least another year. Um, and then I'll turn 50 in August, and then I'll probably reassess my life, look back on the last half a century. I do have some written projects. There is going to be a Visionary Rebels and Machines podcast, and I am writing about the importance of institutions, especially in the United States, and how, yes, the political situation over there might, affect the potential future success in the United States, given the fact that most of the success in technology came from the US, and it came because of government support and creating an environment that fostered creativity. So that's a back burner projects I've got cooking right now.
Sounds good. As an American living in Europe and Sylvan being a European living in Florida, we can all pray for Sylvan. But with that in mind, if people want to get in touch with you to speak to you at one of these epic Christmas parties where you're having cool conversations or ask you more questions about the work that you're doing, what's the best way to do that, Jamie?
Well, LinkedIn is fine. People can ping me an email at my Jamie Dobson email at Container Solutions. LinkedIn, I can't use Twitter anymore. I can't. So that's my social media is limited to LinkedIn. It's driving me crazy because I hate that platform almost as much as I hate Elon Musk. Um, so LinkedIn, email, and if you've got me on WhatsApp, I'm very quick on WhatsApp these days.
Good to know. Jamie, thanks so much for your time. Look forward to seeing you at AF for the rest of us in October. Take care.
Thank you, Bert.